Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video, and this is a very important update relating to Dragonflight. This is the pivoting point. This could be the most crucial turning point for how PvP is going to turn out, at least in the initial stages of the expansion. We have two major talking points in today's video. We are going to be covering the Play with the Blues testing that is going on this Friday. And this is going to be an event where Blizzard employees are going to be queuing up some battlegrounds and arenas against community members and players on the beta, simultaneously looking to gather feedback, looking at kind of build diversity, looking at options, looking at tuning, and trying to get the experience as polished as possible. So this is the big point for all of that to start to happen. And we have another talking point that's a little bit, rough around the edges to deal with, and we'll go into detail with it. And that's about tanks in PvP. And now I know a lot of you see me as like a tank player, a tank connoisseur, having dabbled in it a little bit, but I'll get onto that as we get to it. First order of business is the Play with the Blues test that is going on this Friday, November 11th. So come join members of the World of Warcraft development team on Valdrakken Realm on beta test. As we test Dragonflight's new talent trees in a PvP environment, we will be observing and looking for areas of feedback on general PvP, focused on talent builds and the recent adjustments made to player health and dampening. So this was a big shift in a video that I'll have linked at the end of this, where they increased HP by 40% and are considering changes in dampening. Now, all of the PvP testing is pretty much exclusively being done in ranked solo queue, and the pace of dampening is dramatically different than ranked 3v3, where you're going to be competing for gladiator mounts and titles. So I'm a bit worried that the tuning is going to be off if dampening is not made to be at the same rate as it is in solo queue into ranked threes, or vice versa, because the tuning is going to be a lot different. Games feel faster because your healing is going to be reduced by 50%, 3 to 6 minutes faster than it would in a competitive 3v3 match as opposed to solo queues. So there's some big concerns there. Second big concern is that they have scheduled this on Friday, November 11th, which is currently when the Wrath of the Lich King Classic tournament is going on. So for players or anyone involved with that tournament, it's likely going to overlap with it being at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is only like 3 hours after the tournament, unless for some reason everything is a blowout. There's likely going to be some overlap. Now, 3 p.m. is the battleground testing, so maybe the arena players aren't as concerned. And then at 4 p.m., it looks like, is going to be when we start to see rated solo shuffle testing engaged for this. So maybe there's some possibility to squeeze that in. I guess it's just really unfortunate timing. I can only imagine that this was like scheduled really far in advance for this date, but it is definitely a problem that I've seen and criticized a bit from some of the players who would like to participate but are going to be otherwise preoccupied by the Wrath of the Lich King tournament. So regardless, this is the big point. This is when to get in here, to get your character tested, to give feedback on talent. So like for me, for example, I want to make sure that all of my talents feel like they have some sort of option or playability within the game. And there are a lot of classes right now that feel kind of locked into certain builds or certain lanes on their talents, and other ones aren't doing anything, and other ones are doing too much, and some of them are bugged. So really, this is the time to get it so that you can have the most build choice of all of your classes. I do also hope that people make Demon Hunters, because my God, this class is... this class needs some tuning, to say the least. It has been a while since I have seen a class as strong as Havoc Demon Hunter currently is in the beta, and a lot of classes that are focused around percentage-based healing. So like Demon Hunter with their Sacrifice Demon and their Leech healing. Well, not so much their Leech healing, but their soul, when they kill their demon, they pick it up. Like I have clips of it from my stream. A Demon Hunter can go from 1% to 100% in less than 1 second when they kill their demon. So there's definitely some adjustments that need to be made towards this percentage-based healing that is currently on the best classes, and that's probably why they're the best classes, like Death Knights, Demon Hunters, and Warlocks. Although this could maybe be dangerous if you play one of those classes that's on the top, if this is the main kind of pivot point for them, and maybe you want to be a class that's middle or maybe a bottom so that you don't have just all the eyes glued onto you, because right now it's really clear there's a stark difference in power and ability from the top ranking classes towards the bottom. And after this play with the blues testing and we see the changes that they've made as a result of them, I'm going to start to release some videos talking about like what are the best specs, the best strategies and stuff like that. So if you want to stay up to date with it and stay ahead of the competition, then do make sure to hit the subscribe button, because I'm trying to be an excellent resource for that main reason, so that you're always enhancing your gameplay maximally. This then leads into our next point of discussion, which is really important, is how are tanks going to function in PvP? Now, myself personally, even having played a tank in PvP quite a few times, more or less for the meme nature of it than anything else, I don't think that we need to really debate whether or not tanks need to be in PvP. We need to debate whether or not there are specs that are invincible and do 3 times the damage of every class. I think that's a better debate topic, because oftentimes we haven't even had tank specs ruining competitive play, right? It may have just been one standout spec. I'm thinking like Arms Warrior at the beginning of Shadowlands. Why was Arms Warrior so standout in competitive play in all of the competitive matches? It was invincible and did 3 times the damage of every other class. Then we moved in towards the end of Shadowlands. We had Outlaw Rogues propping up. Why were Outlaw Rogues so prevalent within the top level of competitive play? Invincible, did triple everyone's damage. So you can see that this is like a common trend that's not even just related to tanks. I think that tanks would be a lot less infuriating if they weren't invincible or did 3 times the damage of everybody. It seems like more of a tuning issue. Also, the beginning of this post talking about tanks talks about them in capture the flag environments as if they are meant to be like a core member of these battlegrounds, when they had strictly gone in and made changes to try and dissuade people from playing tank specs as flag carriers, because they wanted to encourage other classes to carry the flag. So it doesn't even seem like they're really like that. They're not really meant to just be the flag carrier spec. It's just that Guardian Druids have a legend that makes you immune to CC, so they're the only flag carrier, and they run through the middle of the map, right? If that didn't exist, I'm wondering if maybe you would even see a tank spec as a flag carrier. So like their role in Battlegrounds, which I saw is like, that's a pretty solid role. Like you're a flag carrier, objective player, you fit really well in Battlegrounds. But in team deathmatch format, you really can't have a spec that's invincible and does 3 times the damage of everybody. And that goes for tank, healer, or DPS. I don't think that that's going to provide a good gameplay, because for all intents and purposes, we could classify Havoc Demon Hunter right now in Dragonflight Beta to the same level as Guardian Druid is in pre-patch. 3 times the damage of everybody. It's invincible. It's not really fun. What you're going to see is that towards the top end of the ladder is just 4 Demon Hunters in a lobby and whatever the best healer is. And I'm really worried about like the lack of diversity between classes. And this has been the one thing that has been ongoing amongst multiple patches, is invincibility. This even harkens even further back in time, right? When you think about even the Burning Crusade, Resto Druid was really difficult to kill because Lifeline was super easy to apply and just kept targets alive and made them invincible. We moved into Wrath of the Lich King, and Holy Paladin got a bunch of toolkits and things that made them invincible. And it's always been ongoing like this, where like the ease of the output is too low versus the actual output, so anybody can just never die on this specialization. And it's kind of like something that's just like forced into a class to try and make it viable so more people are playing it. And I'd rather see the balancing a little bit more even. I don't think that there should ever be a class, regardless of tank role, healer role, or DPS role, that is just like flat out invincible to any type of damage in the game. Like there's some instances where you could say, well, Death Knights are balanced because they're invincible to casters, but they're weak to melee. And I would rather it be like, you're 60% stronger in a melee and like, or 60% stronger in a casters and 40% stronger or weaker in a melee, like a slight skew and advantage towards it, but not like outright, you joined the game, oh, there's mages and warlocks on that team, you're winning this guaranteed. And oh, you joined the game, there's warriors on that side, sorry bud, you're out. Like I don't really like the cut and dry rock paper scissors nature of it. Little edges and stuff like that I'm fine with, but I don't think anybody really likes invincibility or forever prolongated arena matches because of this, right? That's kind of the core nature. So their changes for tank are to remove them as a standalone healer. Tanks are now going to be classified as damage dealers with only a maximum of 1 tank damage dealer permitted in the match. So this means that for Prot Warrior queues, you could get a game with 2 healers, 3 DPS, and 1 Prot Warrior in that match. Now, this is likely going to have the result of, the tank specs that are under 2. Because what's funny is, like, you say it's tank specs, but there's some tank specs that aren't invincible and don't do 3 times the damage. You don't even see them. They don't even exist. Like, if it's between like prop paladins and guardian druids or any other healer, maybe vengeance is all right now. I'd have to keep up to date with that. But like something like brewmaster, you don't even exist. Like it, and I mean, a lot of people would prefer that, I think, that aren't tank players at least, is that you don't exist in competitive play. This change is likely going to do that, where you're just not going to win a lot of rounds as a tank with this format. Whereas before, is when you were, there's a tank on both sides and no healer, one tank was guaranteed to win. So that tank is automatically going to start to climb a lot easier. It was going to be really easy to climb as whatever the most overpowered tank happens to be in any given patch. So this change is likely going to limit the possibilities for tank players to climb to a high degree on the ladder. They've also decided to classify prop paladins as healers, but they're only going to be placed in matches where the other team is also a prop paladin healer. Now, this is where things start to get confusing, because they say with a maximum of 1 tank damage dealer permitted in the match, but at the same time, this is a tank that's a healer. So can you have 2 prop paladin healers, 1 prop warrior, and then 3 DPS? Because that would be interesting, to say the least. And I think the big criticism towards having tanks as healers only as a standalone is that it doesn't really play like arena formats generally have. So it doesn't feel like you're really getting anything out of it, because it seems like a format that's never really going to be played in competitive 3v3 matches, for example. And I don't think you'd ever see 2 prop paladins with a prop warrior and 3 DPS either. So there's a little bit of questions that need to be answered between these two, because that could be dangerous. Alongside these updates, we'll be looking closely at and actively tuning tank abilities in PvP, specifically how they fit in solo shuffle. This is the biggest post that they talked about the entire thing. Like, this is the one thing that can save it, because everything else about it is like, we don't want to exclude tanks. Okay, fine. But if you're not going to tune them, and you got like 3 tank specs that don't exist, and then 1 tank spec that's doing 3 times the damage to everybody, it's invincible. This is what needs to be done. It needs to be tuned out of the game. While it's like a good laugh, you watch the Guardian Druid spinning around, pressing Moonfire on everybody and watching them die. It's like, it's going to get old pretty fast if it's exceedingly tuned like this. So my hope is that now with the Play with the Blues test coming through, with posts like this, seems like they've been on top of addressing feedback and talking about it. Now seems like at least that this week is like the main PvP focus, is that a lot of these problem points are going to be significantly addressed, and we're going to start to see like the changes that really need to be made to make Dragonflight PvP as great as possible. So I'm excited for it this weekend. This is what I've really been waiting for, so we can start talking about class comp strategies and viability and stuff like that. Very excited. Let me know with your comments down below as well. How do you feel about tanks and PvP? I already know the answer for most of you is going to be just get rid of them, except that one guy down there is going to say it's fine. I've tried to present my case here. The biggest thing for Dragonflight is tuning. Regardless of tanks, DPS, or healers being in arena, is tuning. And the main thing is no invincibility. I don't want any spec that's running around that doesn't take any damage and then also happens to do 3 times the damage. That's even worse when it's like that, because that's going to be a really big problem. And it has been a problem ongoing that has ruined what could have otherwise been really good seasons of PvP, is by having just one class that's randomly like that, even if it's a class that's typically underrepresented, or maybe is and still is underrepresented, because sometimes, and not in all cases, being overpowered doesn't necessarily mean fun. So overpowered can also be not fun, and you're abusing it for rewards, which is then only a small amount of players that actually want to abuse it for the reward will do so. Whereas the majority of players who want to play something, they're playing it because they enjoy it and want to have some fun when they're able to log in with their game time. So representation of class can be skewed as a result of that. I'm thinking Outlaw Rogue is an example where we saw 100% representation in tournament, but ladder representation was very low. I think for a lot of the players in competitive environment, they're using it because they're playing for money. There's something really risky on the line, and they need their best shot at that, but they don't actually think it's fun. So they're not playing it on the ladder where they're playing more for fun. And I think that's the main difference there. So really hope that we can address this. That's my main pain point. We're getting into the testing. Let's get her done. Get some good feedback in there, some actionable feedback. And yeah, we'll go from there. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will catch you in the next one.